You know, there are some stories that are just so wild, so audacious, they almost don't seem real. This is one of them. It's the only unsolved case of air piracy in American history, and it has baffled investigators for over 50 years. So today, we are going deep into one of America's greatest cold cases, the mystery of the man they call D.B. Cooper.
Take a look at this sketch. This is the face that launched one of the longest manhunts in the history of the FBI. On November 24, 1971, a man walked onto a plane, pulled off an incredible heist, and then, well, he just jumped out of the back of the plane and disappeared. The question that has haunted everyone ever since is, where in the world did he go?
So let's set the scene. The story begins not with a bang, but in the most ordinary way possible. It's November 24th, 1971. It's the day before Thanksgiving, and we're at the airport in Portland, Oregon.
A man walks up to the Northwest Orient Airlines counter. He's calm, looks to be in his mid-40s, wearing a dark suit, a skinny black tie, and he's carrying a briefcase. He buys a one-way ticket to Seattle, pays with cash, and gives his name as Dan Cooper. To anyone watching, he was just another businessman on another bourne flight. He gets on the plane, settles into a seat in the back row, and even orders a bourbon and soda. He was so quiet and unremarkable that one of the flight attendants, Tina Mucklow, later said he seemed rather nice, thoughtful, and calm. Absolutely nothing about him screamed, "I'm about to hijack this plane."
But just after takeoff, as the plane climbed into the sky, that quiet passenger made his move. With just a few simple words, that routine 25-minute flight was about to become an American legend.
So Cooper hands flight attendant Tina Mucklow a note. Now, she's probably thinking he's just trying to get her number, so she just slips it into her pocket without looking. But he leans in and says calmly, "Ms., I have a bomb." Then he cracks open his briefcase just enough for her to see a terrifying jumble of wires and red sticks. This was real.
His demands were relayed to the pilot, and they were so specific. He wanted $200,000, which, by the way, is over $1 million today, and 4 parachutes. Now, that request for 4 parachutes, that was a genius move. It made everyone think he might take hostages with him, so they had no idea what he was planning.
While the plane circled Seattle, you can just imagine the chaos on the ground as the FBI scrambled to get everything together. When the plane finally landed, the ransom, weighing a pretty hefty 21 pounds, was brought on board along with the parachutes. So far, Cooper's plan was going off without a hitch. Okay, so he has the money, he has the parachutes, he lets the passengers go, but this whole thing was far from over. He tells the pilots to take off again, this time heading from Mexico City, and to fly right into the middle of a massive storm.
Cooper tells the remaining crew to stay in the cockpit. At 7:42 p.m., just 5 minutes after they take off, a light flashes on the control panel. The aft stairs, the staircase at the very back of the plane, had been lowered. The pilot gets on the intercom and asks if Cooper needs any help. A moment later, a single calm word comes back: no. And that was the last anyone ever heard from him.
You'd think a guy about to jump out of a plane would be geared up, right? Well, as the lead FBI agent Ralph Himmelsbach later said, Cooper seemed totally unprepared. No helmet, no gloves, no special gear. He was about to jump from 10,000 feet at night in a storm wearing a business suit and loafers.
Let's just pause for a second and think about how crazy this was. He wasn't just jumping from a plane. He was jumping into a pitch-black thunderstorm with winds whipping around at 200 miles an hour. The temperature was below freezing, and below him, nothing but miles and miles of dense, rugged forest. For most experts, this wasn't a getaway plan. This was a suicide mission.
So, Cooper is gone. And on the ground, one of the biggest and most expensive investigations in FBI history was just getting started.
The official FBI codename for the case was NORJAK. They ended up interviewing over 1,000 suspects, chasing leads all over the country, but they were literally searching for a ghost. The man who called himself Dan Cooper had vanished into thin air. So what did he leave behind for them to work with? Not much. A cheap clip-on tie, a few cigarette butts, and a bunch of fingerprints that didn't match anyone in their databases. For a guy who pulled off such a wild crime, he was incredibly careful. And now, he was gone.
For 9 long years, the trail went completely cold. Nothing. It really seemed like the mystery would never be solved. And then, out of nowhere, a little boy on a picnic made a discovery that changed everything.
Right, so what about that 21-pound bag of cash?
The FBI had released the serial numbers for every single bill, just hoping one would pop up somewhere. But for years and years, crickets. And then this. A small chunk of the ransom, just under $6,000, finally turns up. But it wasn't at a bank or a casino. It was buried in the sand on a riverbank. You can't make this stuff up. An 8-year-old kid named Brian Ingram is digging a fire pit on a family outing, and he finds 3 rotting bundles of $20 bills. They check the serial numbers, and it's Cooper's money. It's the only bit of it ever found. But this just raised more questions. How did it get there? And where was the other $194,000?
The discovery of that money just made the biggest question of all even more complicated, the one that's kept people talking for half a century.
Okay, so this is the great debate. Did he make it? The FBI has always leaned towards no. He died in the jump. The conditions were just unsurvivable. And here's a key detail. One of the parachutes they gave him was actually a dummy chute used for training that had been sewn shut. An expert probably would have noticed that. But then there are those who say his calm, cool demeanor and his knowledge of the plane prove he was a pro who pulled it off and became this kind of folk hero.
But here's the thing. Whether he lived or died, D.B. Cooper literally changed air travel forever. Because of him, they invented something called the Cooper vane, which makes it impossible to open those rear stairs during a flight. Things like airport security screening really got serious right after this. And his case still holds a unique title, the only unsolved hijacking in American history.
So, what do you think? Was this guy a criminal mastermind who pulled off the perfect crime and vanished into a new life? Or was he just a reckless guy who made a fatal mistake the second he jumped into that storm? The evidence is all over the place, which leaves us with one of the most fascinating and frustrating mysteries of all time.